Education is preparation for reparations.
There is no other that can explain this better, in my view, somebody who I've been listening to since I was a teenager, than Esther Stanford-Xosei, and she's going to begin our panel by laying out the Pan-African meaning of reparations and how it's rooted in the rematriation of planet repairs. So Esther, over to you.
Thank you. Madam Co-Chairperson Bell, Co-Chairperson Kobina, our Honourable Paramount Chiefs, dignitaries, elders, community members, allies, and all others here today. I'm actually feeling a touch emotional because I think this has been such a powerful and important meeting, because much of the discourse of reparations has become very skewed towards particular regional narratives, and Africa and African people worldwide have become decentered.
Sure.
And this is a huge harm that we are allowing to happen, and to different degrees have been complicit in. If we were having this meeting in the 1990s in Parliament, we wouldn't be in the position that we are in now, because the whole founding of the African Reparations movement by the late Bernie Grant and others centered Africa. Yes, and as we know, Bernie Grant was African Guyanese. So many of us, quote unquote, African Caribbean people knew our Africanness, and we centered that. We knew that our lives would not matter if our homeland was not at the center, because that was the beginning of the great rupture. And now we are facing state-led anti-reparations counterinsurgency that is making us feel that our lives can matter in the lands of our captivity and in the world space that has been created by our historical and contemporary oppressors. So today is a very important day, and it was appropriate that we began with voices from the motherland to remind us as to the roots of this movement, just like the roots of Pan-Africanism, which began in our motherland, and we continued it in the diaspora. So part of this struggle for repair is about that struggle to restore our memory of who we have been, who we are, in order that we can chart that better future. We are now 30 years after the famous Abuja Declaration of 1993 that came out of the first Pan-African Conference on reparations for enslavement, colonization, and neo-colonization. 30 years after the founding of the African Reparations movement, and the great wealth of knowledge on the meaning of Pan-African reparations that was popularized at that conference, in particular in the paper offered by Professor Chimwezu, that really encapsulated the root of repair from an African epistemological standpoint. And many of you that have heard me speak before know that I always promote the Chimwezu framing of the ancient concepts of African reparations as being rooted in repair, the root being reparate, to repair, to repair. And that repair, he pointed out, the most important aspect was our self-repair. The efforts we made to restore our dignity, our personhood, our power, to transform our condition and our material realities, and to wrestle back all those resources that have been stolen and looted from us. That could only be done by a people on the march in creating their own story, their own to who we are and who we want to be. And this fundamental essence of repair is being lost. And that is part of not only the state-led anti-reparations counterinsurgency, but also the movement capture and the elite capture. Elite capture is important here because that is where resources that have been built up intergenerationally by our people and communities worldwide become extracted again by particular elites, whether they're academic, whether they're political elites, whether they're economic elites, whether they are quote-unquote ethnic elites in a society, and they usurp those resources and misdirect them for their own ends. And that is what we are seeing now. And we must not stand by and let this happen.
Speak on.
Our ancestors, yours and mine, worked too hard for this time. Why should the most elevated in terms of their position in the global system of white supremacy racism be the ones that define the future reality of our society? They will never be able to bring about the change that our people are fighting for.
Never.
Because they are too comfortable. So, the class dynamics. We don't like to talk about class.
Talk it.
But we have to talk about class. It's not just race. It's class, it's race, it's sex and gender. It is an intersectional struggle. But I particularly mention class. Because even as women, we can be women of the hegemon. Yes? We can stand by the hegemonistic men that are doing a lot of the misleading. Because we also can be very well positioned, as we are seeing with some state actors, even in the Caribbean. So, the meaning of reparations. There's a politics and there's a battle of ideas going on for the dignity and meaning of African people's repair. And part of the largely untold history of reparations is the struggle not only for reparations itself, but also the struggle between different distinct black classes, if I can use that term, over the strategies for citizenship and the right to envision the racial future. That's a quote from Professors Adjoa Ayatoro and Adrian Davis, focusing on the movement led by our people in North Abuyala or North America. But essentially, there's no universal word or definition of reparations that fits all groups, peoples, nations, and cultures. Every people have to define reparations according to their own interests as a group, not according to the interests of the elites within that group, who benefit from the world order the way it is today. And many of our past freedom fighters were reparationists. We heard already about the 21st of this month being the birthday of Osajifo Kwame Nkrumah in 1909. Yesterday was the birth date of Winnie Mandela in 1936, an illustrious foremother in this struggle for repair and the restoration of Africa and African people worldwide. Why are we denying their legacy? Why are we spitting on their faces? By allowing presentism to guide our strategies and tactics. Have we given up?
Hell no.
Have we given up?
Hell no.
Have we forgotten our purpose and our mission? No.
No.
So that struggle for reparations, like all struggles, begins with a need for a clear conception of what we want, how we define the issue and explain it to the world, and also what is to be done to achieve it. And so I want to just very quickly, in the little time I have left, give an overview of a framework, I wouldn't really call it a definition, in terms of the meaning of African reparations. Because we are the people that birthed humanity. Yeah. And in that process of Africanizing and humanizing the world, we have created knowledge. And it is that knowledge that we have to draw on in guiding us as to our decisions today. That is why you've heard from various speakers on the importance of education. And even in the UK, as part of the African Emancipation Day Reparations March Committee, of which I'm part, we have a slogan: education is preparation for reparations. And that educational journey is a journey of lifelong learning. We continually grow and evolve. And we have to evolve our notions of repair to suit our current circumstances, but also to project ourselves into the future as to the kind of world that we are fighting for today that we may not see.
That's right.
But those that are coming after us will inherit. And so the meaning of African reparations I'm putting to you includes four main aspects. The first being, we have to harmonize the meaning and approaches to reparations or repair for African people globally, centering African epistemologies, that is our ways of knowing and being, and restoring substantive African representation to self-determinedly speak and represent our sovereign people's power in defense of our interests, geopolitically, as African people on the continent and in the diaspora. So by substantive African representation, no disrespect, Sister Bell, I don't mean voting for black MPs. No disrespect. Because we have to be, as Bell has said, we have to challenge this power with our own people's power. But substantive African representation means we have to go beyond descriptive representation, where we have MPs that are lot like us, from our community, may speak the language we speak, but they represent, ultimately, institutions that we do not control as African people. Substantive African representation is where we have a right to shape the ideas, the politics, the goals, the strategies, and the tactics that we are advocating for. And that means that we have to build autonomous institutions of our people's power, locally, nationally, and internationally. And it is those autonomous institutions that ultimately can hold to account our elected officials. Yes. So it's not that they cannot represent so-called, what I call white stream political parties. They can, but we are the ones that should be fielding those candidates, and they are accountable to us. That is substantive African representation. And this has to be about geopolitics. What is the condition of African people worldwide? How are we organizing globally? Or do we just see ourselves as black people in Britain? No. Some in the Caribbean, some in America. And we are these dichotomized, atomized people that do not recognize that we have to globalize our sense of African personality in order that we can harness our people's power to effect the changes that we want to see. The second aspect of reparations from a Pan-African perspective and meaning is that we have to reclaim Africa. Africa is being recolonized right now as we speak. And because they are fighting for their rights to sovereignty. That is what was stolen from us, our sovereignty, our land, our right to belong to our land. And now, even today, many of those lands in Africa are owned by oppressors and colonizers. Why do we have to buy land back in Zimbabwe? Why was there a compensation deal to the white farmers in Zimbabwe?
Namibia and South Africa.
Namibia, South Africa, Kenya. We can go on. That's not repair. Because before you can repair, you have to stop the harm. And that is why reclaiming Africa has always been part of our people's goal. Why is that being lost in the Caribbeanization of African reparations? Why? And if you follow the social media output of the Caribbean Reparations Commission, you will see most of the spokespersons are the heirs of slavery and the repair campaign. Go and check them out. Repair campaign funded by Dennis O'Brien, the Irish billionaire in the Caribbean. Let's not talk about the destruction that was done in Haiti. These are the spokespersons now. Now, what is that doing? That is part of the state-led anti-reparations counterinsurgency.
That's right. Talk it again, sister. Talk it again.
And I have to tell you the truth. Because this is about the integrity of what I stand for and the movement that I was birthed in. And it is about the past, it is about our present, and it is about the future world. And I will not be committing ancestral treason. Because that's what many of us are doing.
Talk it.
Because of short-term gains that we feel we can win. We commit treason against our people. Not on our watch.
Not on our watch.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
On our watch.
So when we are reclaiming Africa, we do so we engage in that struggle to transform Africa, to wrestle back our homeland from the forces of domination, external and internal. Because we always have the internal oppressors, the fifth colonists that work with the external oppressors.
Treason us, Africa.
Okay? And we need to speak about that as part of the repair. But why are we doing that? We're doing that not just because we're fighting against something, but it's also what are we trying to build? And for us, we are reclaiming Africa through that process of what's called rematriation. Now, rematriation is the oldest notion of African reparations. From the time that we were kidnapped, in terms of the recent phase in the early 1400s, we wanted to return. It was a physical return, but it was also a spiritual and cultural return to Africa. And that is also about returning to our way of life, returning the sacred to the mother principle that was essential for the balancing not only of Africa, but the world and the rest of humanity. And what we are seeing because of this original sin, all of humanity is out of sync. And that is why our struggle is a foundational struggle. It is a civilizational struggle. For the kind of civilization that we have to reconstruct in a world of collapse.
And decadence.
A world of polycrisis and collapse on multiple levels. But yet we still, like the phoenix that rises, we have to rise. Because that is written, and that is our destiny and purpose and our mission, and why you were born today. And why you are here today. I'm going to be finishing, just give me 2 minutes. And that rematriation includes the right of us not only to belong, but to return to Africa. The right of us in the diaspora, but also the right of those on the continent. Because that holistic, anti-imperialist, pluriversal nation state, plurinational nation state as Ma'at Ubuntu Man. That is a Pan-African union of communities founded on the best of our African traditions and culture and knowledge systems of Ma'at and Ubuntu. Ubuntu recognizing that we are people through how we also treat other people. And it's called different things, but essentially this is what we have gifted humanity. And that is for us the quintessence of our struggle to restore ourselves and our peoplehood so that we can again be in the driving seat of redirecting the path of humanity.
Thank you.
That is what we have to do. Because right now, people who have come out of us, and some I'm not so sure, are actually controlling the space, militarizing, destroying polluting the earth, polluting our water bodies, our food systems, and so we have the slow genocide. That's not only killing us, it's killing all peoples and all life forms and all our relations. So establishing Ma'at Ubuntu Man, which is the repaired Africa, not the Africa, the Lusophone Africa and the Francophone Africa and the Anglophone Africa, but the Africa for Africans, as the Honourable Marcus Mosiah Garvey and other Garveyists have been advocating for decades.
The China Africa. I want that either.
It also includes the total pursuit of African liberation from the Maangamizi of neo-colonialism or neo-colonial enslavement. So you cannot get to reparations without struggle, without stopping those systems of the Maangamizi that continue in our lifetime. And chattel slavery is still continuing, but it's not the dominant form of oppression for our people. So that pursuit of African liberation, and that is why the African liberation movement, Pan-African liberation movements, anti-colonial movements have always been at the center of our repair movements. It's not something different. And finally, what purpose? What's the kind of world? We want a world, we want a repaired Africa that exists in a multipolar, pluriversal world of global justice that we refer to as Ubuntu Dunia, okay? And we want a world of planet repairs. That is that nexus between cognitive justice, reparatory justice, and environmental justice. And planet repairs is the ancient, the modern version of the ancient formulation of repair known as Suruj Ta, from our peoples of ancient Kemet, Suruj Ta, okay? And they spoke about the need to restore that which is in ruins, to separate, to rejoin that which has been separated. It's a really phenomenal exploration of repair from the ancient African peoples in the land today that is known as Egypt, but it was called Kemet. And that is called Suruj Ta, which is really to restore and renew the world in the process of repairing and restoring ourselves. Okay? Other people have similar formulations, but the original template comes from us. Okay? It comes from us. Now, all of these, in terms of the meaning of African reparations, become central to the strategies, the local. So we are organizing locally or within a national context, but we are thinking and we are linking globally, okay? And they become central so that we become one people, one nation, that we actually recognize the cultural unity as Sheikh Anta Diop and others have, as our historians have actually been teaching us and humanity. And even that struggle to tell our own story is one of the tenets of this battle today. Because there's an attempt to erase and minimize and trivialize and demonize our story in the process of humanizing the world.
That's right. Talk it.
So that really is all I can say. That's all I've got. You know I could go on forever. But that is all I can say. That's all I've got time for. And I've already taken more time than I should in terms of the Pan-African meaning of reparations. And all of these speakers today are going to speak to different aspects of that to elaborate on things that obviously I could not cover. Thank you.
Education is preparation for reparations.